everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today it is time for Friday Reads on a Saturday. If you saw my community post yesterday, I decided to make Friday Reads on Saturday this week because yesterday was Stephen and my anniversary, and I just wanted to have an unhurried day. Didn't want to try to fit a bunch of stuff in. We didn't have any enormous plans, but I just wanted to have a casually paced day because I want to enjoy making the videos and I want to enjoy whatever else I'm doing with my day and not feel like I'm stuffing things in. That is like my whole retirement vibe, is not feeling overcrowded and overscheduled. Can't stand it. It's really kind of funny too, because when Emma comes to visit, she'll be like, "What are we doing today?" And I'll list like one thing and she'll be like, "Great, what else?" And I'm thinking, yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. We're going to sit around and read, and then we're going to go do this one thing. So anyway, we did go out to lunch at a place that we like nearby with a dog-friendly patio, and Wilkie had a pup cup. He's learning how to be a go sit on the patio dog, but he's still a puppy, so he's coming along. And then we were able to go out. We brought home desserts because they have a really good bakery. So we brought home desserts for the evening, and then we did go out without him to the bookstore, and I did not buy anything, and Stephen got some coffee. We had our desserts later. We watched the baking show. It was a nice day. Now here I am to talk about the week in reading. So the week in television, we're still watching the Lowdown, which is kind of a mixed bag. The plot's gotten a little far-fetched because a lot of crazy things have happened, and at first they're entertaining, and then you think, well, how many things can happen to this one guy? But then there's some good dialogue and humor, and I like a lot of the cast that's in it. So it's fun, but there's some flaws. The Diplomat started back up. We're watching that. Slow Horses continues. The Great British Bake Off. So that's kind of what's in the mix. So we will move right on to the books. I finished, what did I finish? Maybe 3 books this week, 3 things, and then I've got 3 in progress and a couple things I'm hoping to cram in before the month ends, but we'll see. Okay, so first of all, I did finish my nonfiction selection of the month, which was I Remember Nothing by Nora Ephron. I Remember Nothing and Other Reflections. Previously in the year, I read I Feel Bad About My Neck. I think I also read Heartburn in this year. These were good. They weren't as flat out funny as the ones that I Feel Bad About My Neck. They're a little more introspective, and they're good, and there are a lot of funny parts. But I think the thing is that if you look at the dates, this one was published pretty close to the end of her life, and she knew that she had leukemia, and she had it for years, and she even has a thank you to her doctors in the acknowledgments. She concealed it until I think pretty much near the end. She didn't share that publicly, but knowing that now that she did eventually pass away due to that disease, you can see that she is. A lot of these essays are kind of taking stock essays or looking back, kind of more cumulative type things, and so there's a little bit more of a pensive vibe mixed in with the humor, especially right at the end. She has 2 short pieces right at the end which just say what I will miss and what I won't miss, and I feel like she just kind of tells us in those last pieces that she is thinking about mortality and thinking about what she's going to leave behind when she goes. And they're really bittersweet too, because I can really relate. Even though she has such a different life than I have, the things in her list, on both lists, there's things that I completely agree with. And I also really resonate with the first couple essays, which are about just memory gaps, about getting to a certain age and spacing out. And you know I do that all the time when I do those videos where I look back on journals I read and I don't remember reading these books at all. But she does it on a much larger scale, where she has met and interviewed really famous people, does not remember. She knows that she did it, can't remember the actual occasion at all. But those first few essays are really funny, and then it starts getting more thoughtful and retrospective, and I enjoy that too. So this is really good. It's a really good companion piece to the other essay collection. If you're on a Nora Ephron binge, just read all of it, and it's really satisfying. And both of these essay collections were gifts from my good friend Michael. And speaking of my friend Michael, we read together The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This was a spooky selection for October, and it was a reread for me and a first-time read for him, which is really fun. I like when you're reading a book with somebody and they haven't read it before, but you have, and you just kind of reading it and thinking, because they're going to come up to all the good parts. And so if you have never read this book, I'm going to be careful about spoilers, but I just love Shirley Jackson. She's so dark and messed up. I love it. It just really, this is the lane of dark or horror-ish kind of thing that I am really attracted to. It's psychological, and her books are all blessedly short as well. And then her short stories, I'm starting to get into those. I've read The Lottery a million times, and I'm just starting to wade into other short stories, and man, they're all messed up too. I love it. So in We Have Always Lived in the Castle, in case you've never read it, there is a house in a small town. It's a big, majestic sort of house. There's been a few kind of lead families in this area, if you will, that have the money and the property. And this family, the Blackwoods, was one of them. But something has happened. Things have fallen asunder. So this book is narrated by Mary Catherine, or Mary Cat, who is 18 years old, but does seem to come across as a younger person. I don't want to tell too much about her. That's just part of the delight. She's a strange one. We'll just say that. She lives in kind of a made-up, enchanted world of her own device, and she doesn't like anybody except her sister Constance. She lives with Constance and her uncle Julian, who is in a wheelchair, physically and mentally declining. Constance, the older sister, never leaves the property. She keeps the house, she cooks, she takes care of Uncle Julian. Mary Cat goes to the village, gets provisions. People stare at her, or so she feels as she goes through the town. And we gradually get that something happened 6 years ago that explains why the rest of the family is gone. And then a cousin appears. A cousin, Charles, comes to visit and wants to shake things up. Mary Cat is not pleased. So that is your basic setup, but the real joy is the unfolding of the story and the careful building of suspense through little hints and the gradual awareness of these personalities. The first time I read it, I thought it was pretty clear that Mary Cat was definitely the strangest one, and that Constance was kind of trapped with her sister and her uncle. And then reading it again, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's look again at Constance. Constance actually gives Mary Cat a run for the money in the strangeness department if you read it carefully. It's just more subtle. She's got a veneer of normality, but there's a lot going on under the surface. So I loved reading it again. I don't want to say anything more about it, but just if you do read it, just look at everybody and think about them and just marvel at how Shirley Jackson tells a story, builds tension with setting, with characters, atmosphere, the house itself and the grounds, and just, she's so good. She's so good. She's so in control, and it just takes you right where she wants you to go. So I loved reading We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Another thing that I read this week was the play Loot by Joe Orton. This is a collection of I think there's 6 or 7 of his plays, and that's all he wrote because he died in his 30s. It's actually dramatic and terrible. He had a longtime partner. It was a murder-suicide, and there was drugs involved, but they found each other during college, and they lived together for years. And in a happier time, they got in trouble. Well, it's not happy that they went to prison, but they did this prank that they did for a couple of years where they would go to the library and they would check out books. No, they didn't check them out because then their name would be on it. They stole books from the library, and then they kind of, why am I telling this like it's a fun story because I'm a librarian? But they defaced the books. They put fake covers, and they make them really lewd and saucy covers onto the books and put notes and things in the books. And then they'd smuggle them back into the library, and they'd hang around and watch people discover them. So it's not really, I mean, it is vandalism. It wasn't like they destroyed the books. They just thought it was really funny to spice them up and make them kind of goofy or weird or offensive, and then watch people find them. So, but eventually they got caught, and they went to jail. They contended that there wouldn't have been a prison sentence if they hadn't been gay, which is probably true because it was the early 1960s. But I guess conditions deteriorated as they both were writers. Joe became successful as a playwright, and his partner did not. And something happened in the balance of their relationship that went a terrible direction. Loot is a farce. It's a very, very dark comedy. And it has been censored and banned in its early days because it just skewers a lot of institutions. Religion, the Pope, the police department. At the beginning, there's a woman who has passed away. Her husband and the nurse who was caring for her in her last days are discussing what they need to do. They're going to call the funeral home. This man has a adult son, and then that son has a friend. At the same time, a robbery has occurred that was accomplished by somebody tunneling from the funeral home into the bank next door. Well, it was Dennis, who is Hal's friend. Hal's the son. Dennis worked at the funeral home. And so there's this whole thing that starts up about them hiding the money and trying to plan a getaway. And then the nurse, who is like a serial killer, and a bunch of shenanigans with hiding the body, and because they want to hide the money in the coffin, and the body popping up here and there. And like just all of these kind of dark and offensive comedic physical comedy things ensue, and it's very irreverent and very much very edgy in the humor. And so I can see how staged it could be really great because of the level of physical comedy and things that kind of rely on not just the lines spoken but the body language included. Double entendres, and it's very clear while reading it that Hal and Dennis are a couple and not just a pair of friends, but the other adults don't really catch on to this. And nevertheless, they're both making plays for the nurse and just all kinds of ridiculous things. I would like to read more out of my book. When I go into the next year of Endless Drama, I'm going to try to mostly pick different playwrights just for the exploration. But I have this complete volume, and I'm going to be reading, I'm only going to put in one play a month next year, but I'm going to read more plays on my own, and I'll probably put a part in the section where people can talk about other plays. And I do want to hit at least one more play from this collection in the upcoming year. There's a couple in here that I've heard about a number of times, so I'll probably read Entertaining Mr. Sloan or What the Butler Saw as my next foray into Joe Orton. I also might have to go back and reacquaint myself with that old movie from his biography called Prick Up Your Ears. It was an early Gary Oldman movie, and I am a big Gary Oldman fan. And I saw that a million years ago. That's how I found out about Joe Orton to begin with. It started with the movie and then went backwards to reading some plays, and now the cycle is starting up all over again. So that was Loot by Joe Orton. Okay, so let's take a look at what I'm currently reading. And wait a minute, crooked camera. I am currently reading 3 things. I've pretty much been reading 3 things all month, and here's the pros and cons. I have been able to juggle the 3 books because I've been reading one longer Victorian novel and then having 2 other things going as well. I usually have 2 books going, and then I read some poetry or short stories. Well, guess what took the hit? So I did read a collection of poetry this month, but I haven't been reading on a daily basis poetry and short stories, and that's just beyond my bandwidth. So once I finish up with my big Victorian long novel project, I'm going to recalibrate a little bit so I can fit some of those other things back in. I am in the midst of my second long Victorian novel, and it is Dr. Thorne by Anthony Trollope, which is the third book in the Barsetshire Chronicles. Previously, I read The Warden and Barchester Towers in previous months, and so this is book 3. I have this little reading schedule, and if I follow it, supposedly I will be finished around the end of the month, but anything involving math is a little suspicious with me, so we'll see. But I'm just going to keep reading it until I get to the end. So far, there haven't been a lot of crossover characters in this one. The previous book, Barchester Towers, had a lot of characters coming through after The Warden. It was almost like a sequel, but this time only a couple of people have appeared in the periphery, like in maybe at a dinner party. There was a dinner party where the Bishop and Mrs. Prouty appeared, and I was hoping there was going to be more, or a conversation. There was a kind of a funny conversation, and the person talking to Mrs. Prouty finally got fed up with it and managed to escape. So it was fun to see those people reappear. And it's mainly about Dr. Thorne, who has raised his niece, Mary, ever since her tragic beginnings, which I won't tell you about because that's the whole beginning of the story. Now that she has come of age, and so has her friend, Frank Gresham, a possible romance is in the air. And Frank's family is highly against this because they really need him to marry a woman with money, because his father has squandered all of the family fortune on ill-fated political attempts to get a seat in Parliament, and on his big collection of hunting dogs and horses, and keeping his grounds for this big hunting, I don't know, hunting stuff. Anyway, he blew the money. And so now he has all this debt, and Frank needs to marry a rich woman. Frank is in love with Mary. He's only 21. He's still a student. He's impetuous. He's not very serious about anything. There's a wonderful scene where he is made to spend a week or so with some relatives because Miss Dunstable, a wealthy, independent woman of around age 30, is going to be there. Well, Frank and Miss Dunstable become really good friends. There is no chemistry whatsoever, but a number of men are trying to pursue her. It's just a wonderful part of the story. And then it's about Mary sort of becoming more aware of how the circumstances of her birth are limiting her options as far as what people care about in this society. So there's definitely an examination of what makes a person's value. The obsession with wealth, the obsession with lineage and background, and what are people actually responsible for? What are people accountable for? What actually matters? And so all of that is at play. Dr. Thorne is fiercely protective and an advocate of Mary Thorne, highly incensed when it is suggested that she is not a suitable candidate for Frank. I love that about him. There are some weird elements in this story too, though. There's a couple of very strange and off-putting episodes of violence that I was not expecting, and that made me really wonder about certain characters, what I'm supposed to make of this, how people reacted to this back when it was a new book. And so I can't really tell you anything else about it because I'm avoiding spoilers, but there's a couple of things that really gave me pause in here where I thought, what exactly what just happened? So if you have read this, you probably know what I'm talking about. But it's about the journey and the path and the growth of the characters. So I'm enjoying it. Not sure exactly how everything's going to fall into place or what further miseries will occur before it all resolves, but really love Anthony Trollope. I'm also near the end of A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This was the second selection in my what's my other thing? My science fiction double feature. I'll probably finish it today. There's just a little bit left, and it's a pretty fast-paced story. This is often referred to as cozy science fiction. I think that's accurate, but it's not excessively cozy. It's cozier than what I usually read. It is definitely in the cozy category, but it's not completely bland or without conflicts, danger, suspense, a little violence, hazards along the way, as you will often find on an intergalactic journey. So it is about the adventures of Rosemary, who takes a job aboard the Wayfarer, which is a vessel that can tunnel through time and make these passageways that other ships can go through as shortcuts between planets. And they hire her as a clerk, which I think is pretty funny, that they have the crew and all the technical people, but they need someone to do the paperwork because they all suck at it. It's basically her job, the bureaucratic stuff. And so she gets this job, and she has some secrets of her own, things about her background that she doesn't really want to share at first. And then it's about a found family story about the members of this crew. And the point of view does move around. It doesn't just stay with Rosemary. And we get chapters about the point of view of the different characters. And the characters on this ship are not all human. There's humans. Earth is kind of kaput. So the humans are actually people who have grown up on either spaceships or other planets. And then there are people from other planets also within the crew. And a lot of the book is really about the bonds that develop between these very different individuals, about respect and appreciation of their differences. There's a gentle challenge to be aware of the frameworks that we bring when we meet a person and look at them, and how to open that up wider and not to be a specious, as they call it in this book, which is basically being a racist about people or bigoted about people of other species, people with completely different physical layouts, different mores, different approaches to gender and sexuality, different physical needs, emotional needs, temperature needs, food needs, everything different, but still someone that you might form a really close bond with, or even intimate relationship. There's a plot with some dangers and surprises and hazards on the space journey, but I feel like the core of the book is really about the found family and the different kinds of love that they experience. And so that's kind of what makes it cozy, but it's also what makes it satisfying. And I don't do well with a steady diet of coziness, but every now and then a book that is just a little kinder and gentler is a nice thing to read. And so I have been enjoying this one. It's a series. I think I will go on to the next book, but not right away, but maybe in a couple of months I'll be ready to hit the next one, depending on how it ends. If it suddenly goes sideways at the end, maybe not. But I think I'll be wanting to hang with it and see what happens to this group of people next. And then I'm also reading The Magician's Elephant by Kate DiCamillo. This is a buddy read with my friend Michael, who we have been reading very slowly and sporadically the works of Kate DiCamillo, the children's author, because we love Kate DiCamillo and we both used to be children's librarians. This was one that I had not read that was published in 2009, and we've just started talking about it, so I'm not going to say much about it, but it takes place in an unidentified but somehow Eastern European feeling town in some sort of time in the past, also not determinate. It's about a young boy named Peter who is hoping and wondering if the sister that he's always been told had died at birth is actually alive, and he gets hope from this from a fortune teller. It also has to do with an elephant that is accidentally conjured by a magician and falls through the ceiling of an opera house. That's all I'm going to say about this so far, but I'll talk about it next week. So we're coming into the last week of the month, and there's a couple things left in my TBR that I didn't get to. First of all, I didn't get to any of those short stories that I didn't get to in September and also in October. So I'll talk about those a little bit more next week, this upcoming week, in my November TBR. But I have two novels that were on my list that I haven't gotten to, and I want to get to one of them especially this week I'm hoping will be my final book of October. And you know, if you've watched any of my last few videos, that I'm dying to read One of Us by Dan Chaon. Stephen is reading it right now, and he's not telling me much about it except that he said it's the minute it begins, you're completely hooked. So I can't wait to start it. As soon as I finish one of these other books I just talked about, this is up next. And the other one that I checked out of the library and wanted to read but ran out of time is Model Home by Rivers Solomon. And I don't know if I'll just go ahead and read it and let it roll into November, or if I should return it and get it back out again later. But I do want to read it. I just don't know if it's going to fit in right now. But that's it. I almost got everything read from my October TBR, and I've enjoyed, I don't think I've had any duds. I think I've enjoyed everything. I feel like the month went really fast, and I can't believe I'm about to do the November video, but everyone says that every single month. I can't believe it's the next month, but I really can't. But time marches on, and so does our reading. So let me know what you think about any of these books, or what you've been reading this past week that you are loving or not. And I will be back soon with the aforementioned TBR and maybe some other things. I haven't exactly planned the week to come, but here it comes. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.